Glad that you're here with us on Morning Express on this 27th day of July 2015. It's a Monday morning, and well, we did have the President of the US here in Kenya, but he is now in Addis Ababa. But of course, there's a lot that we have to look and reflect on after he has left. And on the way it is, we'd like to do that this morning. So let me start by introducing the panel that we have this morning, and I'll start with my extreme left. We have Hassan Omar, who is the Senator for Mombasa County, and also the Secretary General for Wiper Party. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had a good weekend.
It was a fairly a good weekend. Okay. Monday was Saturday I was in Mombasa for some activities here and there, and then Sunday I came to listen to Obama at the Kasarani.
So you had Kasarani yesterday?
Absolutely.
Okay, you'll fill us in on some of the things he said and what you feel about them. We also have Ompla Karani, who is ODM Treasurer. Glad to have you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming. I hope you also had a good weekend.
Awesome.
It was a good one.
Yes.
Fantastic. We have Mudioki Njagagwa, who is MP from Bere. Thank you also for coming. How was your weekend? Was it
Mine was good. Mine was fantastic.
Okay, good. And last but not least, Bill Okero, who is Senator for Mandera County. Glad to have you, sir.
Thank you.
Your weekend was good as well?
Great, yeah.
Okay. Glad that we all had a good weekend. None of us had a stressed out one. All right, and maybe I'll start with you, Hassan Omar. And the question is, we had all this hype, and we expected the President of the US to come. He came, and your take on generally the whole weekend from Friday to Sunday. Did it meet your expectations?
One thing we have to acknowledge, which I increasingly saw was the reality, is that Obama evokes a certain emotion in Kenya. I think,
is it in Kenya or worldwide?
I think, but more particularly in Kenya. For the first time acknowledging that he's actually the first Kenyan-American president. And I think that's what Kenyans have always claimed ownership of Obama. And I think that for him gave him the extraordinary treat that the people of Kenya did give him. But I think the security machinery that was put in place, collapsing this road, stopping the airspace, and many other things, I was told, yes, it's routine for Obama's travel, but it was a little out of the ordinary. So I think that also is an inconvenience, but Kenyans then decided to take that time out. But they listened and literally tracked all of his movements. I think the GS summit was fairly, in order in terms of the fact that the objectives that I thought would be achieved were achieved. A lot of pledges in terms of resources to particularly empower young women and young people. So I think on the totality, there was a certain expectation that was met. They had the bilaterals with the Kenya government. He met with the civil society. He met with members of the political opposition, and he spoke to us. In fact, for me, I was more interested in what he was going to say, because most of the times the rhetoric reflects part of the policies a country is trying to pursue.
All right. Senator Bilo, your take on the visit, did it meet your expectation after all the pomp and hype about it?
Yes, I think it was an epic visit. I actually had written in my column a couple of weeks ago that I downplayed. I didn't think much about Obama's trip, but I think his visit really surprised me. I think I was really impressed, very impressive speaking. And I think Kenyans, most Kenyans just discovered it too late in its final term, that we actually had a Kenyan, a true Kenyan in White House. But I don't think many Kenyans really thought so much about Obama until they had him speak in the last couple of days, and then just realized that we had a guy, we had a Kenyan.
Well, I think there was a lot of hype around it when he became president, but of course from his own admission, he didn't want to show like he was favoring Kenya.
I don't think that, well, of course he had to say that diplomatically, but I think the reason why he didn't come, I think, was known to everyone. They didn't think so much about that coalition government, and of course the way that coalition government came in, and this one also. So I think they've just, for Americans also, he's also just realized that he missed quite a lot, that he should have actually come. You can see from his speech that he really felt he should have come a long time ago. And so this thing about, I didn't want to play for, I think it's trying to apologize to Kenyans, but I think it was a great.
So for you, it delivered.
I think yes.
Okay, I'll come to you, Oglan. Do you agree with Senator Billow that one of the reasons why he may not have come is possibly he didn't think much of the coalition government, and as a result, maybe he's endorsing the current government?
That's not what I believe. One, I should say that in my view, Obama superseded my expectation. He was very natural, he was very authentic, and he was in touch with the problems and the issues that Kenyan people have. In his last visit as a senator, he spoke precisely about the same issues that he spoke about them today. So I don't think there was any endorsement that he was coming to make. I think he was just coming to Kenya, one, as a son of Kenya, who needed to have come home, and two, as a president of America, who needed to also have done his trips around the world. So I feel it was good that he came at this time, and he did what he needed to do.
Okay. Muriuki, and your general view of the whole weekend, right from Friday to his exit yesterday?
My view would be that this was a defining moment for both for Kenyans and for Obama himself. It's an epic moment. It's an endorsement for the Kenyan government by the Americans, more so Obama. Number two, I think it's also Obama needed to communicate to the world and tell them, look guys, I'm a Kenyan. And those were his exact words. So I believe for us, it has taken us, like he said, to that level in the world that we belong, we are a state, and we should steer things in the global world from this part of the world. So like somebody has said, it did actually define Kenyans, who we are, that we can go all the way to become even the president of America. So we can.
Okay.
Michael, if Obama had not come as president and come any other time after that, the excitement for him visiting Kenya would have been extremely lukewarm. In fact, it was something, I think it was of an extraordinary thing that he did it when he was still president of Kenya. For me, I don't know what is Mheshimiwa's perception of endorsement. That endorsement, if it was any, it ended with a dinner at the state banquet. Because the speech on Sunday, there's a quote Obama said that he told certain opposition leaders to be consistent, which I think I totally agree with him. I think it's a general message to all of us that you cannot constantly appear to be penduluming between positions. But in terms of the speech on Sunday, I think from the first letter to the last letter, if you were to critically analyze it, in fact some of the media houses tweeted that Obama tells Jubilee to stop profiling of Muslims. Obama tells Jubilee to do this and this, because from the word go, he talked about ethnicity, inclusivity, skewed development programs, corruption, the tacit support and approval of corruption. The excesses. This is the second president who is supposed to be an ally, who's telling, after Museveni, telling the Jubilee government to stop the unequal and unjust treatment of some of the sections of their communities, their minorities. So it went on and on, the treatment of women. So I think if you were to look at it broadly, for me, that endorsement was probably thrown up in air because he did what is called functional responsibilities of a president. He opened the GES summit. He went on to meet the president in a bilateral. They exchanged the pleasantries of a joint press conference. But then when he was now to deliver a message to the Kenyan people, if you were to be analytical, I was sitting among my colleagues from the Parliament, Senate and the National Assembly. I can tell you almost through all the places, there were only a handful of us clapping. In fact, to a point where I could hear the murmurs, particularly said that a child from Nyanza stands four times the chance of survival of a child in Central. I think those who know Kenya know the inequalities that we've been talking about, the skewed developmental agenda. People got nervous. And on and on, and on and on. So I think it's endorsement, the word endorsement, has really changed.
Okay, all right.
When we talk about inequities in this country, What I'm saying, the endorsement was that he endorsed our constitution. He told us, look, we now have another constitution. That inequalities will be done by the governors. You know, Obama was speaking to the world, not basically to Kenyans. He actually said there's corruption all over the world, not in Kenya. It was not that he was hitting at our government.
I knew that you believe he did that.
He was, you see,
and
he was speaking to the world. And again,
too sensitive about
look at it this way. This goes again also to the governors. We know some governors are keen on developing certain areas where they come from. To let them also spread the resources to the all parts of their counties. So if we go ahead with this new constitution, we are going to get that equality in Kenya, equitable distribution of resources. When he talks about the girl child, we know everybody in Kenya is talking about the boy has been neglected. So he's not telling us what we have not done. Anybody who comes to this station says, we have been talking so much about the girl child, the boy child is neglected. What he was telling us, we've already done, we already passed that. Actually now it should be, resources should again be skewed towards the boy.
Okay.
Lest the boy is forgotten.
All right, I'll come to, let's now tackle issue by issue of some of the things that stood out. And one of the things that stood out was women and youth. And we have a soundbite which I'll request our director to just play, just to refresh our memories on some of the things that President Obama made very clear he would want Kenya, and we believe it would help us progress. So here's a soundbite from what he had to say.
Kenya will not succeed if it treats women and girls as second-class citizens. I want to be very clear. Now, treating women as second-class citizens is a bad tradition. It holds you back.
Okay, so he makes it very clear, and I'm coming to you, Senator Bill Okero, and says that when we treat women as second-class citizens, it holds us back as a country. We have a deadline of the 27th, I believe, of August to have the one-third gender rule in place. Are we targeted to have this done, given that this is something that even internationally we seem not to be too keen on doing it as we have been, you know, direction?
No, I think he needed to have acknowledged the progress that has been made in the last 3 or 4 years, really, after the new constitution, because the new constitution provided expressly that 1/3 of the public appointments be given to women. That has happened today. 1/3 of the cabinet, 1/3 of the chief officers women on all public appointments. He needed to also have acknowledged that even in the Senate and in the National Assembly today, there is a significant level of representation of women through the affirmative action. And so I think there has been some progress. I think what Kenyans need to do is to, of course, there is a lot of activity that is going on, I think, in the both in Parliament and in the civil society, to try and get that 1/3 gender issue legislation in place. So I think it's the Constitution does, in spirit, you know, talk about it progressively, but I think the effort is being made to try and get that thing before the deadline in August. And I think there is a lot of work to be done. And I think also when you look at it also from the point of view of education, I think this country has really gone a long way, even in remote areas like mine and others. I think the boy or the girl child literally have similar opportunities today. They all go to school. There are girls' schools everywhere. There are, so literally, I think in that area, I think he needed to catch up a bit. But in this country, that there's a lot of effort that has been made to try and bring take girls to schools. But still, there's a lot that needs to be done to try and probably assist them in certain areas. But the political aspect, I think, is being addressed.
All right. So, Ogla, do you feel that there is enough that has been done so far to have the one-third gender rule in place?
I feel Kenya has tried. It has done its best, but there is still more to do. And Obama did not just talk about satisfying the political angle of gender balance. He talked about every other spectrum of educating a girl child. He talked about protecting the rights of women. He talked about those primitive problems that African women or women generally in the world face, including domestic violence and all that. And those are things that we are still grappling with as a nation. And so it was good that that he needed to mention it, because we need women in this country and girl child to continue feeling respected, of course without undermining the boy child. We have to balance. We have to bring up every child in this society. But as for the gender rule, I believe we are doing our best, and I think we are going on the right direction. But about this legitimacy issue that we have continued talking about, I keep wondering, what is this serious crave about legitimacy? It therefore means that Jubilee very clearly know that they have no legitimacy, and they really are desperate to see someone coming to affirm their leadership. Of course, I know they don't have legitimacy in their leadership. That is why it was a big thing to say Obama has come to confirm, Obama has come to confirm. Obama talked about serious issues. Ethnic inequality in this country cannot be sorted out by devolution. As we speak today, in the public service itself, I'm talking about the employees of Kenya government, civil servants, those we call civil servants. Most of them, more than half of them, belong to the president's tribe and the deputy president's tribe. I mean, where are the other about 35 tribes of Kenya? They are not enjoying the national cake. He talked about a girl in Rift Valley who may not be able to go to high school as a girl in Nairobi. And of course, we know very well poverty levels are higher in places that have not produced a president of Kenya. He made a statement that was so awesome. He said, we did not inherit society from our forefathers. We have borrowed from our children. Right. The problem that we have in Kenya today is that this government has loaded our future generation on loans and debts. In other words, instead of taking care of society, so to speak, enhancing social capital so that our future generation leaving an inheritance to our children, we are loading our children with burdens of debts, and our children are going to live paying debts which they did not even look for, and they did not pay. Those are the things that Obama talked about. We should stop talking about these side shows of legitimacy. Who cares? Jubilee should know that they have no legitimacy. That is why they are craving for legitimacy. But what we need is to fight corruption, is to talk about ethnic inequality. That is a fundamental problem in Kenya. We need to talk about corruption in the high levels. Obama talked about corruption from the higher levels and the lower levels, and he said we need to see prosecution. We are every day talking about senior government officers to the highest level in this country from the days of independence until now.
Okay, we'll come to corruption.
When will we fight that?
We'll come to corruption in a bit. Let me first of all hear from Muriuki in response to that, and what Jubilee government is doing, especially when it comes to equity, and the issue of tribalism came up quite clearly, that needs to stop.
Now, when we talk about, she says about legitimacy. You know, I keep on wondering, what is this code and the opposition are talking about legitimacy? They went to court, they lost.
The one who said it.
They went to the ballot, they lost. So what other legitimacy are we talking about? But when Obama comes and gives up a thumbs up for this government, then they are crying. It's like a crybaby issue. We are saying Obama came and he gave us as a Jubilee the thumbs up. Actually, even told them, I can see them there from the screens. He hit a jab at the opposition. They must respect the government of the day. It is for them to criticize. It is for them to offer constructive criticism, but not to talk about that Jubilee is legitimate. We are here to stay until after the 5 years. Then we meet again at the ballot box. And believe you me, it will be resounding more than it was in the last year.
Okay, in terms of inclusivity and equity.
Well, in terms of inclusivity, look at the ministers, the CSs. Look at the PSs. I want to imagine that a better portion of this country is represented in the government. All right? When you talk about corruption, we have been seeing in the last 2 or so months, senior cabinet ministers have been taken to court. All right? We are talking about the EACC. They're also investigating some matters to go to court. So what Obama was actually saying is what we as a country, we as a government, this government has been doing it. It's not that it was coming to teach us the ropes. We are still at it. We are still doing it.
All right.
Yes.
And one of the other issues that he mentioned, and of course I can hear we're already going that way, is to deal with corruption. And maybe if we can get a soundbite just as a reminder, because that's a huge elephant that we have had in the room for a long time. And here we have it.
Sometimes people at the top do very well, but ordinary people still struggle. Today, a young child in Nyanza province is 4 times more likely to die than a child in Central province, even though they are equal in dignity in the eyes of God. That's a gap that has to be closed. A girl in Rift Valley is far less likely to attend secondary school than a girl in Nairobi. That's a gap that has to be closed. Across the country, one study shows corruption costs Kenyans 250,000 jobs every year, because every shilling that's paid as a bribe could be put into the pocket of somebody who's actually doing an honest day's work.
All right, that's what he had to say, and I'll come to you, Senator Hassan Omar. And this is more to do with tribalism, and also he talked about closing the gap. How do we practically close that gap that evidently is there? If the U.S. president can come from the U.S., and I'm sure there must have been enough research done for him to come up with this. He cannot just be saying this from the wind.
Definitely. What I think we should do is to get down to the issues. This whole thing about the U.S. giving them legitimacy is neither here nor there. In fact, Kenya, the opposition already recognizes that you are a government legally in office. That's exactly what Obama said. By realm of the Supreme Court, that might have been a legal position, but it doesn't mean we agree with it. But on another thing, before I come to the corruption issue, let us not make it appear that the women agenda is just about nominations to Parliament. I don't think that is the women agenda as a standalone. In fact, if we were to achieve that agenda, I want us to totally change the modus operandi of how they get nominated or they get appointed into Parliament, because you can almost see a temptation by those who are already there to preserve their positions. And I think when you sit in court, you might end up bastardizing the Constitution the way the National Assembly did last when they were sitting in court to make this Constitution to undermine certain institutions of the very Constitution they were making at that time. Lastly, on the issue of corruption, definitely there are facts to these issues. And what we need to do is to see a greater audacity in the fight against corruption. We need to speak out more. We need to speak out even against our own ranks. I saw that, for instance, I keep saying, I saw the Mombasa audit report. It's outrageous. Even if most of those issues were justified, a number of them, cannot necessarily even, make sense in terms of logic. So I think that said and done, I think we need to be firm. We need to go beyond the issues of rhetoric. As we said, we need to go beyond the issues of simply, changing a law or trying to strengthen an anti-corruption law. It must be a lot more in terms of making sure that first and foremost we punish the highest level of perpetrators, and we need to punish them not through a kangaroo process that we see right now, where we need to focus on even value change. There's a value in this country that makes corruption so okay. I have looked at some of the comments I get from people when you speak against corruption. It's like they own it. It's like you're a small beneficiary of a small little system somewhere, and you feel the obligation to support corruption. So I think we need to also have a fundamental value change, even at the lowest level of our kids, to be told that it is not right to steal from public office.
All right, I'll come to you, Senator Bilo, and in regards to corruption, do you feel the government is doing enough? One of the things that Obama mentioned is that we'll need to see prosecutions, we'll need to see heads rolling, if at all the government is going to claim and to be seen to be serious against corruption.
No, I think there's 2-3 things that the President Obama talked about with regards to corruption. One, that is a national endemic, that it's all Kenyans who need to do something about it, that the people must stand up and say enough is enough. It's about the public. It's about the values, really, of the society itself. And I think this is one fundamental issue that we all know. It's pervasive in the entire society, and it's something that the society needs to say enough is enough, and we let us stop corruption, really. I think that point came out very clearly. Second, I think he also alluded to the fact that the government, and specifically the President, has initiated some some effort in that regard, and that he would want to see more in terms of prosecutions and so forth. So I think the point here is to tell the government, try and do more. It's not, you know, you've started it, but don't stop it. Go ahead and really, you know, get more people out of government, get people prosecuted and charged and convicted for corruption. And I think this is a message clearly to the president that he has done well. He needs to do more in terms of targeting corruption in his government. I think the third, of course, is that he also mentioned that it's in all levels, both at county levels and national level, really, and that, you know, and it's costing. And that cost he mentioned of 250,000 jobs is something that the government has been talking about the last 10, 15 years, that nearly 1/3 of the entire public expenditure actually is lost in corruption during the process of procurement. So that is the figure that works out to, you know, 250,000 jobs. And I think what he's saying, therefore, is that really we are losing a lot. And I think so, and it's happening now in the counties, it's happening at the national level. I think it's something that we all know, and it's something that, so it's not something that it comes from US. I mean, it's a figure that has been out there. How much does 1/3? At one time, the PS Treasury mentioned about 300 billion shillings equivalent. And those are the that's the kind of money that he's talking about. And I think so. It's really come out very strongly. I think very clearly on those three areas.
Okay, Ogla, how do we finally slay this beast of corruption that has kept coming again and again? Although the president did mention that this is something that it's a global issue.
He said it's global, but he said some societies, one of which was his own country, has put their efforts in front of themselves and have decided to pay the price. Now, so we cannot rationalize our corruption because it is global. I talk to so many leaders in this government today, and I tell them, why are you involved in corruption? And I'm telling you, some of them have told me the same rationalization. Are we the first ones? In other words, we are saying there was corruption from 1963, so why don't we, who am I to stop it? So I feel corruption has become a systemic problem in our nation. And we all must rally ourselves to fight it. For example, we need to, the government has the authority. It has the legal structures to fight corruption. So the government of the day should start by fighting it deliberately, and it should be clearly seen. People should not only be prosecuted and asked to step aside. People should be told, should be jailed, literally, people who have stolen, so that this country can start feeling and fearing this thing called corruption. But because it has become systemic, I think we also need to pay a price of doing a lot of civic education. A lot of civic education across the country. Because corruption is all over today. Even to get a birth certificate in the village, people have to pay something small. They imagine that you have to pay something small when you don't. Let me give you another example. I hear our leaders, our top leaders, when questioned about giving so much money in fundraisings, they say we are generous. I mean, and they even use the Bible to say that we are giving because we are generous. Surely, I'm a Christian myself, and I'm sure even the Muslims can tell us that there is nowhere in the Quran or in the Bible that justifies stealing and going to give to people.
But we cannot prove that they have stolen to give to people. We don't have proof of where the money is coming
from. Obama himself, Mike, although
that statement needs to be qualified, because we cannot say they have stolen. We don't know they have stolen.
In the State House meeting, Obama said, people are not fools, and I think that is what our leaders in this country need to know. The fact that you hold a position as a senator or an MP or a president or a deputy or anyone else in this world does not make you more superior in human intellectualism. People are not fools. We know the salaries of these people. If today Senator Omaria, who we know his salary, would be giving 2 million, 3 million, 5 million in every weekend on Saturday, Sunday and Friday, surely, and he even went ahead and talked about, we see you buying a brand new car today, your wife, your sister, your daughter. People are not fools. Can we please ask these leaders to therefore declare for us where they are making these millions of money that they are giving? And We cannot also try to say we need, you know, this thing that we have done in Kenya, hiding behind confirmation, hiding behind justification. Let us just be practical this way. If indeed this money that these people are giving are not stolen, why are they the same people who are being mentioned in Sky Teams? There was a story in the newspaper about some of them being Sky Team exhaustionists. Others have been, most of them have been mentioned along on corruptions, including grabbings, including procurement issues. We are able to just translate directly. I mean, we are not fools. We are just able, even my mother in the village can say, no wonder I saw this person on TV being mentioned. Now I am seeing them giving this money. But we also need to educate our people in the village. We need to tell them, when you ask Senator Bello to bring money and he comes and gives you 2 million, don't celebrate. Ask yourself, where did he get it?
All right, Muriuki, you wanted to say that?
I just wanted to say that our constitution is very clear. You're innocent until proven guilty.
That's why we got
and it's not the accused person to prove their innocence. It's the prosecution actually to prove that you're guilty. Now, everybody knows our salaries as state officers, members of parliament, senators. But of course, what they're not saying is that some are in businesses, other businesses, legitimate. All right? At best, Kenyans again are very keen on about rumors, spinning theories. And we have a system in government. There's a prosecution, there's investigation arms. We've been saying that, people have been saying for a long time that people are stealing from these state coffers to go and give. We know that Kenya is one of the most states where, well, like us, members of parliament and the Senate, they can tap us, they can get to know what is it we are doing, what we are saying. So other than just budding about issues of corruption against us because we contribute in Harambes, I believe that does not really hold. Let us pin somebody, ask him, where are you getting this money from? You have stolen from this. Then he's taken to court. At that point, he is innocent until the legal process is over. If he is jailed, well, but it's not a matter that somebody must go to court and you must get, people must be jailed. No, the state, the prosecutor must prove its case against the accused, and then you get a conviction. At that level, you're still innocent.
All right. Yes. Now, one of the things that Barack Obama mentioned, and I'm coming to you, Hassan Omar, was the fact that it was very inspiring to hear that we as Kenyans need not to seek even education outside. We are able to get everything done here. We can fix it as we are. Do you feel we're at a point where we actually can do that? Our education is good enough to take care of us. We don't need to have our children go abroad to seek, a further education.
Yes, on one issue before we leave on it, we must also, to that point where African philanthropy, including Harambee, is an inbuilt part of our culture. It is undeniable. In fact, African societies rest fundamentally on its own systems of philanthropy. That's why some of us went to school. It's the philanthropy of my uncles and society that got me to school. And many of us here could say that who come from fairly underprivileged backgrounds have gone through a certain system of African philanthropy. Where we have issues with the issue of Harambee as a coalition is when it is used for political manipulation. So that's why we have this fundraising bill that we've right now processed in the Senate, and hope it will graduate to the National Assembly and be able to get the concurrence, so that we avoid manipulation of that word Harambee, or philanthropy, to a point that it exploits us in a political sense. But then secondly, on matters, it is true that Kenya has come a long way. In fact, I'm not only, I have never been to an international university or a private school. I was in Mombasa Primary School, public school, Lenana School, public school, Moi University, public university. So therefore, the systems of education and opportunities have been developed so much so. But we need to ensure that these public schools are made of a certain quality. Look at the public schooling system lately at the primary and secondary school level. It's almost in chaos. People do better when they're in private schools. So we need to constantly improve the quality of education in public schools, because That is where the majority of us do go to. In fact, public servants should lead by example by taking their kids to public schools. So I think in that it is evident what Obama is saying is Kenya, and it is something we all know. Kenya has grown tremendously. It in fact exports to other countries human resource. Yeah, you go to Kenya, you find Kenyans in Namibia, in South Africa, and most of the southern African states who are in their universities, in their part of the private sector. So what we need is to what is most annoying sometimes is that we could have done better. There's this money that goes to Westage. There's inequalities in terms of education opportunities. Today, the entire schooling system in northern Kenya has collapsed. Already, you have positioned, you have put the northern Kenya communities, particularly of Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa, historically have been disadvantaged and marginalized. Today, the entire school system is collapsed. And you hear a cabinet secretary literally saying they have no plan to either set a special examination or to do anything that intervenes in a manner that is formidable. So already you have disenfranchised a large section of that community. So what we need to do is to ensure, because education can build equality. Education promotes that quest for equality. So unless we are able to do something more fundamentally radical to ensure that every person somewhere is able to access the same levels and quality of education. So Obama might have been talking, but has been talking with respect to certain cities, Mombasa, possibly Nairobi, Kisumu, a few cities where they have access to these types of opportunities. But he did not necessarily factor the broad diversity of the Kenyan people who are still living under marginalization.
Okay, I'll come to you, Senator Bill Okero, and this is still in regards to education, and basing it on what Senator Hassan Omara said. We have good universities, we have good schools. However, we cannot ignore the fact that a place like Mandera, the only university that they had, is now closed because of the terror attacks, because of its security. Are we doing enough to ensure that education is equally distributed in this country, such that a child in Mandera has equal chance with a child in Nairobi or a child in Mombasa?
First, I think we will need to discuss the whole subject of the war on terror and security, because there's a key plank of the discussions.
Yes, we'll come to that.
But on education, I think the message he was trying, my understanding was that he was trying to inspire Kenyans to have confidence in their own country and invest in your own country in terms of education, in terms of that you have the potential to develop your own, systems to invest in your own country. And I think this is basically the message he was trying to say. And I agree with him to a large extent that many of the Kenyans who are educated really, and they are relatively compared to many countries in Africa, that education is from this country. And I think the message he was sending is that you have an opportunity to build education in this country, and you have them, and go ahead and it's about confidence really. It's about inspiring Kenyans to do something in their own country that they can do. I think that is the message. But I responding to your question, I think the message that he also sent out is that, and which we all know, is the absence of inequality in this country is a major issue, and these reports have been published, time and again, and this inequality comes about because of skewed policies, whether it's on education, on economy, on whatever. Our policies have always been based on political expediency or patronage, and so a lot of things. If you want to be the minister, if you're the minister for education, you would want to start some college in your place. You want to do some things in your county and so forth. So this has always been the main challenge, and this is why you don't have. So the second challenge we have is that you have a national exam, for example, now KCSE or KCAP. So you have a child in Turkana, in Mandera, who probably doesn't even have a classroom to sit in and study, sitting for the same exams in Alliance or in somewhere in Nairobi. And that's clearly, you cannot allow those students to compete fairly. There's no fairness in that, and there's no equality in that. And I think this is the challenge. But on issues of the situation really, which is the effect of the war on terror, I think it's something that we need to discuss in the context of what's going on in Northeastern.
All right, we'll come to that. And one of the things that he seemed to take a swipe on, I'm coming to you, Ogla, was the opposition, like there was double speak. But before I go to that, maybe we'll just play a clip and just remind us what he said. If we can have that clip, please.
some of the opposition leaders very briefly, those who are not in government after the speech. And I told them, you have a legally elected government, and we're going to work with that government, but we're also always going to be listening to all elements of Kenyan society. It was funny, though, that one of the opposition leaders, I won't mention who, was saying, you know, we really need you to press the Kenyan government on some issues. And I had to say to him, I said, I remember when you were in government, you kept on saying, are you trying to interfere with Kenya's business? You should mind your own business.
All right, Ogla, is there double speak from the opposition?
No, in fact, Senator Hassan here alluded to that incident. And one, we should admit that the opposition has long accepted that this government is in power now. By whatever means, we are okay.
Have they really accepted, given the fact they're always saying that they're there illegitimately and always...
Yeah, in fact, I should repeat it, they are illegitimately in office. But
so have you accepted when you keep saying that
we have left them,
double speak?
We have left them, it's not double speak, we have left them to rule because we decided to ride on the higher realm. We decided not to cause, not to continue agitating for things that will cause problems in this nation.
When you keep making statements that they legitimate or statements that allude to the fact that the government is there illegally or the votes were stolen, have you really accepted?
Michael, there's a difference between legitimacy and legality.
Yeah.
Totally a difference. You might be legal but not legitimate. You could be legitimate but not legal. So there's a total difference in that. So the fact that we do not, we said it very unequivocally, that we respect the decision of the Supreme Court. That made the government legal, because we are in a legal framework. Whether we said, but we don't agree with it. That says, therefore, the issues of legitimacy do arise. So I think those that, in fact, Obama, I think, was very careful. He's a lawyer. He knows that there's a difference between legality and legitimacy. So it is just an issue.
Okay,
let me
I have not
think
answered my question. Okay, please go ahead.
You know, you know, we must as Kenyans respect the rule of law. We cannot really, I mean, I'm sure members of the opposition also respect this constitution and that there is a rule of law. And if the process of election has been validated by the highest court in the country, really highest court, and I don't think it will be appropriate for opposition to continue winning about, you know that this government, is illegitimate or whatever. I think this is a matter that has been decided at the highest court, and I think it's important that we respect that. The second point is that at every opportunity there are some of the leaders in the opposition who have always claimed that this government is, in office illegally, and so for that point has been raised in the Senate. They have raised it outside. They have raised it everywhere, and I'm not surprised. They must have raised it with Obama. And I think the point the president is making is that, which we all appreciate, that there are people who have cut their teeth in opposition and they know how to, and there are others who are still learning to walk the ropes. So. But I don't think it really makes sense today in this country. And I want to agree with my brother here when he said earlier on, this is an endorsement. Endorsement in the sense that America itself is the same nation that argued when Uhuru came into power, the president came into power, that, even before the election, that choices have consequences, and, they didn't want to deal, and only on essential contacts, and they created all that kind of thing. So I think he's coming here. If you look at it in that context, you have to contextualize it. Then you can see it's an endorsement, really, that initially they said we don't want to deal with this government. Now they're coming and saying, really falling over themselves to try and deal with it. So that, I agree, is some sort of endorsement. But I think the opposition, some of the opposition leaders need to appreciate that America and Europe, the Western countries, have changed the way they play politics nowadays. That age, that period when they used to force countries like Kenya or others to do this or do that, and conditionalities, and those days are gone. And I think he made it very clear that these days you can't do those things anymore, because countries are Kenya, for example, now 95% of their resources come from their own budgets. They get very little from donors. They don't listen to. So you cannot push countries around. So I think if somebody goes today to Obama and tells him, look, can you tell this government to do this, I think he must I've really missed it.
In fact, that's Michael. Can you allow me? I think, in fact, for me, this it was a good lesson to all of us. You know, some of us, at a very heavy price, try to remain very consistent on the things that you say. It's not a joke. It cannot always be a pendulum of, you know, whatever you want to do. We must be very consistent. In fact, the consistency in life is finally what people respect. I remember I said a very unpopular thing, but one of the friends from the U.S. Embassy said, wow, that's very legitimate, because I said, where is Abdul Malik, this Kenyan that you have in Guantanamo? Because we're all saying all the right things, and Obama himself has been facing enormous opposition in the closure of Guantanamo. So he felt that we needed to raise that public pressure on some of these issues. And I was very succinct to my colleagues that in the opposition, that it's not a question of telling them this is it. You have to take certain positions and try to lobby those positions so that the U.S. also can adopt those positions. Let's say in disengagement in Somalia, in terms of a phased disengagement in Somalia, issues of common interest like you know, the treatment of counterterrorism measures, the support. I don't think we have the tools ourselves to pressure the Kenya government to do what some of these things that the Jubilee is doing right now. Out of sense of pressure, when Uhuru realized that the chorus on anti-corruption was getting very high and the Kenyans were becoming totally angry, he decided to do the little thing that he did in the House during the State of the Nation address. So we have the means and tools in ourselves. So I think what happens though is this consistency must go across the board, and I think I wouldn't fault the President Obama on that, because I think some Kenyans do notice some of these such fundamental shifts. You know, Bilo someone today saying one thing, then the next day saying a totally different thing.
So we cannot totally say that there is no double speak, especially given culturally.
He did not disagree that the issues are genuine. Let's say we might have raised issues on ethnicity, inclusivity, corruption, etc. He did not say that those issues are not legitimate or they're not genuine issues. All he said is that, but you remember one day, this is the strategy he disagreed with, that you are going to tell Uhuru Kenyatta that you must do this. I think he said, well, some time back you told me not to do that, now why are you telling me to do that? So I think the strategy is what was faulted. But the issues are still, do not go away.
The question was mine, Mike. Let me just answer by saying that if, first of all, this issue of legitimacy, if you are legitimate, you will not cry to be validated. You will be confident and comfortable. I
don't think they do.
Now, in the issue of this case where Obama has been talked about telling the opposition that it's when you are in government, I agree with him, and I'm sure everybody else is agreeing. I think we must grow, mature as Kenyans, to learn not to have unrealistic expectations from external support. Our problems must be sorted by ourselves, and we should not be seen as people that think that someone else is coming to solve our problems. In fact, he said it in Kasarani, that the population of Kenya should be able to stand for that which they need from their country. So I think it is, and again, this matter that Senator Hassan has talked about, when we are inconsistent as leaders, inconsistent, today we are in this side, tomorrow we are talking about the other one, the other time we are, I mean, everybody, every human being can naturally question us. So we need to write on our own on our own identity and value our nation and believe that we have the solutions to our problems.
What it takes.
Yeah, okay. And we can solve our problems.
All right, finally, before we go to security, because I need us to talk about security before we wind up.
We must agree on two things, Mike. That Kasalani has always been Kisilani for some politicians.
That's a new one.
Yeah. Obama himself said it in uncertain terms. That is the first sitting American president to come to Kenya. I mean, that is very weighty. Why didn't the others come? I mean, that's why I said that the relationship between Kenya and the US have gone a notch higher. All right. He again said, democracy is not just about elections. It's after elections, and after that, let the opposition keep the government of the day on its toes. But let them not just be just crying every other minute. Let them offer what we call constructive criticism. Where the government has done something good, let them say you've done well. Like they behaved, I would say they behaved when they said, let us all welcome Obama, other than a protest. I mean, kudos to them. That one they called their people to come out and rally and welcome Obama. That was good. I'll give it to them. But going forward, since we're in the same country, let us all support each other. If at all the government ever fails, it's their duty to criticize. But when the government does something good, it's again, let them acknowledge and move on. Like you're saying about the education system in Northeastern, the insecurity issues, for all of us Kenyans, we need to come up with solutions, but not always just to be throwing bricks at them and saying, it's your government now, move on. We are affected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Bill Okero, finally coming to security, matter security, is there hope at the end of the tunnel now that the U.S. government has come out very clearly and weighed in to say they're in full support? Will, in fact, to quote him, he said we'll work shoulder to shoulder and they're going to pump in some money. Is that what we need?
First, I think there's a message that the U.S. president gave out very clearly about the war on terror, which is a very clear message that the government's approach to fighting terror is wrong. At the press conference in the State House, the President Uhuru agreed. He says, this is new to us. We are trying to find the appropriate methods and we are trying to improve. But I think the message really is what we've been saying for a long time, many of us, especially the Muslim leaders. And that position that we have always given was vindicated by Obama. In the morning when they were going for that meeting to Kasarani, I tweeted actually to Obama that Kasarani is the same venue where the controversial detention of thousands of Somalis was held last year. You know, and so when the president therefore talked about the profiling, punishing entire communities or painting them with one brush, and this whole thing about victimizing a whole community, it doesn't work. And he talked about the example in the US where they also have a Muslim minority, but they don't. You have to work with communities, you have to work with people. This is one thing that this government has completely failed in, unfortunately, starting from the president. Because we've always told the president, look, what you guys are doing, the security forces, they are excesses. They're victimizing entire communities, they're profiling communities. Today in Northeastern Province, there are hundreds of youths who have disappeared at the hands of police. We talk about it every day, no action. You are picked, that's the last time you are seen. How does that help in the fight against terrorism? Last year I visited a madrasa for people in Machakos. It was shut down simply because somebody who graduated from there 10 years earlier was involved in some terrorism activity. How do you shut down an entire institution simply because somebody who graduated? It's like saying Nairobi University will be shut down. So these things, what is happening in Northeastern today, where because of that, the government openly, clearly has displayed that they are indifferent to what is going on in Northeastern Province. Institutions have collapsed, public servants have left, the education system is not there, people don't get identity cards, there is a lot of resentment, and the president would never spend 1 minute talking about it. Nobody wants to bother about it. Hundreds of Kenyans have been killed there. Not a single visit, even to go and find out what's going on. This does not help, and this is what he said. Obama was trying to say that this is not the right approach. You have to allow, there has to be inclusiveness, they have to change the approach. And I think that message really resonates very well with some of us in the Muslim community. And this is something we need to change.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think the second thing is that this war on terror, to a large extent, has been a proxy war on behalf of the U.S., especially the presence of KDF forces in Somalia. And to that extent, I strongly think that the President Uhuru should put a lot of pressure on the U.S. to foot the bill, really, because this is a global thing, yes. But if you look at the genesis of all these things and what happened even in Somalia when they moved in the first time and all these things started, I think they really need to put in a lot of money to finance all those the presence of KDF and other armies on.
Okay, Hassan, let me first of all hear from Hassan, then we'll come to
Michael, and I wanted to just first say something. I'm a person who tries to always analyze why things happen in a certain way. I found that issue that Obama came and not the other 43 presidents is a bit hollow in terms of its analysis. There are compelling reasons why Obama would leverage to come to Kenya. No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But when you say that, why did the 43 other presidents of the United States not visit, and the 44th one visited? For heaven's sake, he has Kenyan roots. He had to look for every opportunity to come here. The analysis around it is a little hollow. But that said it, Nana, I am also in concurrence with Senator Bello. We've been saying these things repeatedly, literally with audacity to the Kenyan people, the audacity Obama said it with. We kept being branded as terrorist-loving Kenyans who do not feel the pain of the victims, you do not victimize other people just because they are victims somewhere else. You victimize an entire society, you victimize an entire community, you victimize an entire region, you victimize an entire faith. Today, some of the Kenyan Muslims are some of the most industrious. Go and look at the Forbes listing of some of the richest people in this country. They are Muslims. Yeah, so we are not here by anybody's invitation or favor or extension of goodwill. We will be here. So I think that's what what Obama was trying to say. And this is, as I said, the second president who's told us as much. Museveni told us the Funza theory, that you don't cut off the entire leg, for heaven's sake, just remove what is there. So what has happened, we've been cutting off, literally hitting this, and yet some of the communities or some of the areas like Mandera voted for Jubilee en masse. They hoped that maybe a government would reciprocate. So this in fact, just my parting shot, I was seated with a few friends, a few colleagues from particularly Jubilee. They said, Leo Obama ameongea kama activist. I said, that's not activist. Silly you. That is where the world is moving. The world right now has broad notions of justice, equity, fair play, constitutionalism. That's what it is about. Jubilee looks at it as some or a section of Jubilee looks at it as an activist thing. It's not activist. It is what the world is about today.
Okay, Muriuki Njagago, before I come to Ogla with your closing comments, just your final thoughts on Obama's visit and what we should expect and projection.
My thoughts on that. The words that Obama was talking when he was at Kasarani were not necessarily aimed at the Kenyan government, and he said it as much. All right? When you see, he talked about corruption, it's all over the world. He talked about the girl child, it's all over Africa. But again, I'd said in Kenya, we are beyond that. So he took that chance to address the world, not to address the Jubilee government, as it were.
Okay, thank you. Ogla, your closing comment.
On this case of insecurity, a poor person is hopeless. A marginalized person has no value for life. And I think we need to face it once and for all. This marginalization of northeastern part of Kenya is one thing that is going to frustrate this country. Because we must be deliberate. Those young people in that country are children growing with aspirations like our children here. I mean, and they need to see themselves being accommodated and accepted and being facilitated to belong to the society. But when we do not give development to that part of the region, they have no roads, no schools, no hospitals. They are living in abject poverty. How do we expect them not to fall into the hands of terrorists? And that goes to anybody, people marginalized in Turkana, people marginalized in Nyanza. You know, we try in this country, we are very quick to label, to brand, and to accuse. But we don't want to look at the root cause of the problem. I don't even know whether giving money, Senator Bello, will help this nation. How about if that money will be stolen by the same people who are stealing? I think we need to change the structures in this nation. We need to change the way we approach these issues. There are other communities like Central Kenya here who have benefited a lot in matters of national development and policy and everything. They have schools literally in every place. Can we please now transfer most of this money into Northeastern, into Turkana, into other places? I mean, we must be seeing this generosity, the philanthropy that we are trying to talk about. President Kibaki, when he came to power, he stopped Harambes, and he did more than this government is doing. This philanthropy we are talking about as Kenyans. I am personally educating so many poor children today, but we sit in my house with my husband and budget our little money and distribute little. And that is what we want to encourage. But because this demon of philanthropy is a spirit that is used by incompetent leaders, It is because they are incompetent that they want to give so that they are validated by society. When you are competent, you do your job. You distribute resources to all the country.
All right.
So we need to take care of the marginalized community. And we need a serious economical affirmative action, and very deliberate, if we really want to end this terrorism.
All right, I think we'll have to end it right there. Thank you very much. A great panel there, and that's the way it is. Thank you very much, Senator Hassan Omar, that's Senator Mombasa County. We have Ogla Karani, who is Treasurer for ODM, Muriuki Njagagwa, MP from Bere, and Bill Okero, Senator Mandera County. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. That's where we wind up the way it is, and of course, after the GES and after Obama left, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Well, do stand by. We've got our lifestyle section coming in, and we are still talking to an entrepreneur who has rose from wherever he was. He's going to tell us his success story and what he is doing to ensure that he does not just remain the entrepreneur, but what he's doing to influence those around him. Well, that'll be coming up shortly, so do stand by.